this is Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.com, and this is episode 17 of the So Free Art podcast, which is a little podcast I do each week about art and things. And this one's going to be about art this week, and it's going to be about sketching people in public, which is something I love to do. But I remember when I first started doing it, I was terrified of it. In fact, there was a point where I thought I would never be able to do it. So I'll talk about some of the fears that I had and stuff, and some of the little things I did to make it easier. But I'll also talk about some of the tools and things like that. So this one's going to be all about sketching people in public, and I thought I'd do that this week because it's been a really nice week in terms of the weather. So it was time to get back out sketching people. That's what it feels like. It's always around this time of year I like to get out and sketch people. But I did say this week was going to be about the Reiki healing, but I'm actually going to do that next week. But I have wrote up the diary entry. It's completely finished. I've just got to post it, which I'm going to do tonight. So it should be up by the time of this podcast, and I'll link to that in the show notes. So hopefully do Reiki healing next week, and I think that's it. I did what I said I was going to do last week, which is I posted a new video to YouTube, so you can get that at youtube.com/Sophie Lawson, and it's actually a video about my first drawing on the website, which is a drawing of the anime character or video game character Setsi from Atelier Tottori. And I actually really enjoyed going back to that drawing because it was amazing to see. It's like when you go back and look at old work, it's quite inspiring really, because you sort of see how you've improved and stuff. So I found it quite inspiring looking back at the old stuff, because I remember when I drew that and it felt like it was one of the best things I ever drew. So it's just nice to see that you do get better, because sometimes you don't realise how much you're improving. So it was quite fun doing that, and I posted that on, I think it was Tuesday. And so what I'm going to do is every week I'm going to post a new video. It's probably going to be Tuesday. And at the moment I'm going to work through each drawing that's on the website in order. So working from the older ones to the newer ones. And what I did was I spoke about the drawing a bit, but I also picked out a couple of tips. So on that first one it was about drawing hair. It was drawing clothing and how it's your mindset can change the way how much you enjoy drawing something. Because I always used to go into clothing thinking I don't like drawing clothes, and I realised in that drawing that if I went into it thinking I do like drawing clothes, then I could actually make myself enjoy drawing clothes, because that drawing made me realise that no matter what you're drawing, all you're drawing is shapes. So if you just say, if you can almost make yourself, if you think you're drawing clothes and you think you don't like drawing clothes, you're going to not enjoy drawing the shapes of the clothes. I guess that's the best way to say it. So if you just say, all I'm doing is drawing shapes, and you do enjoy drawing shapes, then you'll enjoy drawing the clothing shapes, which means you'll end up enjoying drawing clothing. So I spoke a bit about that, and I also did a little bit about writing with an eraser. So you can sign drawings with an eraser. So that first drawing actually had 3 little tips, but normally there's only going to be one. And I can't remember what the next drawing's going to be, but I'm going to be doing that probably tomorrow, and that will be out next week. But let's get into this week's podcast. I did another float yesterday. So on episode 15 I spoke about floating in a float tank, and I did my second session yesterday, and there was a lot less thinking in that one. So I do think, the more you do that, the less you're going to think. So hopefully one day you could do a float and totally empty your mind, which would be quite nice. But I've been reading about how a lot of people use float tanks to improve their creativity. So I think it's got a lot of benefits, not just physical and mental things like that. You can also use it for creativity, which is exactly the same with lucid dreaming. So I'm quite enjoying how everything seems to be sort of helping. It all seems to be like helping art in a weird way, and like the art helps that. So it sort of is like a circle, which I think life is just a big circle sometimes. But let's get into this week's podcast, which is about sketching people in public. You can find show notes for this podcast at sofreeart.com, and I'll link to a couple of blog posts I wrote, one of which was about why should you sketch people in public, and it talks about some of the fears and stuff, and the other one was a little blog I wrote once about an experience of I suppose it's quite it was a negative experience in a weird way, where a lady came over and questioned what I was drawing. I'll talk about that in a moment, but I think probably the best way to start this would be right at the start, and like the fear that I had. So I went to an art class it was an evening art class with 4 of us, and I had an art teacher there, and she said that she thought what I needed was to loosen up my drawings. She thought I was a bit stiff with my lines, and she recommended that I sketch people in public, but at the time I was suffering with social anxiety quite badly. So the thought of going out sketching people in public, it seemed sort of impossible, I guess, and really scary, but I really wanted to do it because she said it would help me. And it was funny because it ended up not just helping my art, because I definitely loosened up, but it also helped with social anxiety, and so I liked the way that worked actually. It was like facing a fear, it just helped. Da-da-da. So some of the fears I had really was what if somebody sees that I'm sketching them? Well, I should say what sketching people in public is. So sketching people in public, for me there's 2 main ways to do it. It's either sketching people as they're walking around. So with that one you're going to have probably 10 to 20 seconds or something to capture the person's gesture or their essence before they disappear around a corner or something. So that one you've got to be really quick, and you're probably looking at less lines with that one because you're just trying to capture the essence of them, whereas you can sketch people sitting down, say in a cafe or something, and with that one you can get a lot more detail because you're going to have potentially minutes to sketch them. So I still haven't been able to sketch people in a cafe or something, because that one just seems a bit too scary for me. But I have been able to do that in train stations and stuff, because I think there's so many people in there that you can sort of hide away. But some of the fears that I had to start with was, what if my sketches are rubbish? What if somebody sees that I'm sketching them? What would I do? What if somebody comes over and starts talking to me and wants to look at my drawings or something? It was just a lot of fears about the unknown, I suppose, and what ifs. It was a lot of what ifs. So that first time I did it, it was very scary, I remember. But I managed to find... So one of the tips is find a location where you feel safe, I suppose. And I managed to find a bench which had a load of trees and bushes around it in like a U shape. So it was like you almost were hidden inside of the trees on this bench, but yet you were still in the middle of town, so you still had a load of people walking around in front of you. So you felt, well, I felt safe in there, but I also had a good view. So that's the first little tip, I suppose, is find somewhere you feel safe, because I have tried sitting in town on benches with like no back or something, and I feel really exposed and sort of vulnerable. So I just prefer having either a bench with a wall behind me or like trees or something. Another tip would be, I think a good little tip is to have music, because you put the headphones in, and first, if you don't want people coming up to you, if you've got your headphones in, there's less chance of somebody talking to you. But also, having the music on, it sort of puts you in your own little world, so that really helped to start with. But sometimes it is nice to sketch outside without any music, because you can just sort of listen to the sounds. But after about, I would say 5 or 10 minutes, you're so into the sketching that you forget sometimes that you're even outside, and you just get really into it. I also had like the fears of making mistakes or making rubbish sketches, but something I learnt really quickly, especially with the quick people sketching, because you've only got like about 10 to 20 seconds before that person disappears. Most of the time, at least for me, most of the time the sketches aren't that good, so you end up with pages and pages of sketches that are not very good, but you realise it doesn't matter because you just turn the page and do another one, and every so often you'll get one that just looks quite nice. But even the bad ones, I've noticed, they still sort of have the like essence of the person, and when you come home later and look at all your sketches, you'll look at them and you'll be able to like remember these people. And that's one of the fun things about sketching people, is you just start to realise how everyone is really different, not just like how they look like statically, but the way they move. Everybody moves differently, and even the way they stand around. So something I like to do is, because that bench I sit at, there's like cash machines either side of the road or the pavement, so you'll get people standing around at the cash machine, which gives you a lot more time to sketch them. That's like a little tip. But I've noticed even the way people stand at a cash machine is completely different. So that's kind of funny. But something I really like about sketching people is the way your imagination really gets into it, because you have people walking past with like holding boxes or big bags on their shoulder, or like briefcases or stuff, and as you're sketching them, you'll start imagining stories for them, like creating little backstories of where they've been, where they're going, like what's in the boxes, and you just start getting really fascinated by everybody walking around, and you notice that you sort of realise that actually nobody even notices you're there really. Everybody else is in their own little world, so that's something else you notice, so that you start realising there's nothing to be fearing out here, because like you're almost invisible. It's not just the people either. Like sitting on that bench, it really slows you down, and you sort of pay a lot more attention to the world around you. And I think when I first started sketching people in public, that was the first time I really, I guess, slowed down and started being in the world instead of just rushing through it like everybody else that you're sketching. You're actually in, like, watching the world around you, and even like just watching bushes, like flowers and stuff. You see little bees going from flower to flower, doing their little thing. You just realise that the world, there's so much going on in the world with like the insects and animals and stuff that you don't even notice because you're like too busy getting from A to B. So in a way, it's just nice to sit down and watch the world. It helps not just your drawing, but like your mind a lot and stuff like that. But if you go onto the website, on the that I've linked to in the show notes and look at the blog post, I've done some examples of some of my sketches and stuff. So you can just see how some of them, all I managed to capture was their head. And a lot of them don't have feet because I always start from the head and work down. So by the time I get to their feet, they've normally disappeared. So a lot of these people that I sketch have got no feet, which is quite funny. But my favourite thing to draw is like hoodies. I love the shape of hats and hoodies and stuff. But it's really, really fun and I just really enjoy it. I would say it's probably the most fun drawing exercise that I do. I think in terms of tools, because you don't want to be taking loads of stuff with you, what I've found to be quite helpful is using a case of a pair of glasses. You can get that in a pound shop or something. One of the hard cases that snaps shut. So that's quite small, so it doesn't take up much space in your bag or something. But it's just enough space to be able to put like a pencil, an eraser, some blending tools. So it doesn't take up much space, but you can get everything that you need in there. And really, the only thing I really need, I could go out sketching and just take a piece of paper or my sketchbook, which is normally A5 or A6, so that's very small. And really all I would need is a 2B pencil, because I find that the 2B lead it's dark and it's soft enough that you can get really dark, but you can also get quite light with it, so you have a nice range of tones with that one pencil. And when you're sketching, especially if you're doing like the quick people sketching, you don't want to be switching pencils, but you still want to be able to get like some nice tones. So I would say for me the 2B is the best pencil for sketching outside. I also normally take my mono eraser pen, which is an eraser in the shape of a pen, so you can get nice thin lines with that. I'd normally take a couple of tortillions, which is my blending things, so I can get a bit of blending going on if I want. But normally I just use the pencil and that's it really. So you don't even need that many tools. All you need is a sketchbook and a pencil really. So it's quite a cheap thing to do, but it is a really fun thing. So, and I had all those fears at the start about what people would think and stuff, but I realised the more I did it, the more I realised that nobody actually cares, which is a good thing, because it means you can just sit there and sketch and nobody's going to pay any attention, you know. So there is nothing to fear with that one. But I have still got the fear of sketching people in a cafe, and I think it's probably because I'm in an enclosed space. So like when you're outside, you sort of feel like you could sort of run away if you needed to. So I need to get over that fear, because I think it would be so fun. I know somebody at art class who always goes into cafes and sketches, and I love his sketches. He just produces really nice sketches, and because he's got more time to capture them, that you can get a lot more detail in, and he always seems to like get the essence of the place, so you'd like the atmosphere. So I would like to try and do that, but that's another fear I need to get over. I've only had one, I would say, like negative experience, and it's something I wrote about on the website, which I'll link to in the show notes. And it was when I was sketching on that bench, and there was a homeless man, and he was like lying on the bench asleep, but the way he was positioned was really interesting, and I looked at him and thought that I like those shapes. I just felt inspired to draw, like sketch him. So I sat there and started sketching him, and then this lady walked past and said, "Is that a good idea?" And I said, "Sorry," because I had my earphones in, so I took my earphones out, and she basically gave me a bit of a hard time for sketching him, and I still to this day, I don't know whether it was, I still don't know whether it was wrong of me to sketch him, but I haven't sketched anybody like that since, and maybe that's one of the reasons I don't sketch people in cafes, because I think, is it right to do? I think it's okay, But that lady put like some doubt into my mind, I guess. But I don't personally see a problem with it, because all you're doing is you're just sketching shapes. But I can see how somebody could take offence to it. Yeah, so I'd never actually finished that sketch of that homeless man because she made me question what I was doing. But I spoke a bit more about that on the blog post. And I think that's it, really. It's definitely, like my art teacher said, it definitely did loosen me up. And I think, like my little Sophie character, she's very loose compared with my realistic pencil drawings. And I think a lot of that comes from sketching outside. So she was definitely right in that. And so if you want to loosen up, I definitely think it's probably the best way to do it. So I just think with the nice weather, it's a nice time to get out sketching, and it doesn't matter about the quality of the sketching, that's the good thing. All that matters is that you have fun, and it's amazing how much fun it is just to be outside sketching. It's just really good to be outside sketching. But then one of the fun bits is when you get home and you look through your pages. You will have pages and pages of just rubbish sketches. But actually, I think all of them you learn something. But sometimes the ones that you thought were going to be, ones that you thought were rubbish, sometimes they're the best ones. And it also works the other way, where sometimes the one that you thought, I nailed that one. you look at it later and you think, actually, it wasn't that good. So that's quite funny how that works. But if I had to sum up people sketching, I would say it's something I was really scared to do. But it's one of those things I'm so glad I did it, because it loosens you up. So all that's left is this week's inspirational quote, and it goes to Paul Laseau, and it is, "Sketching is a continuing source of learning rather than a string of performances." Paul Laseau.